All right. Marathon 103, and I got a chicken that just walked in my office door. I got the door open because it's kind of nice out this morning, and it's Gemma, my white Americana. She's always getting in here and scratching around. Man, it's like a zoo around here. Hey, we're going to get into 3 really awesome stories. All 3 of them are great. But first, I want to say happy birthday to a few people. And I got a couple of emails. Why are you wasting time telling people happy birthday? Well, it's because that's what I want to do. It's my channel, and that's what I want to do. And I like making people smile, and I know when people hear their name over the TV or over the radio or over the YouTubes, they smile, and I like making people smile. So the first person I want to say happy birthday to is Chase. Chase lives in southern Pennsylvania. He's going to be 9 years old on August the 13th. He's got a brother named Liam, and I want to wish happy unbirthday to Liam. I don't know when his birthday is, but I wanted to mention his name. And they both have a brand new baby sister that's just about 2 months old. And they have chickens and goats on their place. Boys, you take care of that little sister. You watch after her, and you help your mama take care of those goats and chickens. Jeff is going to be, I don't know how old Jeff is going to be on August 19th, but his wife Kathleen sent me an email and said, hey, say happy birthday to Jeff, which is kind of her saying happy birthday to him through my channel. So Jeff, you got a lovely wife named Kathleen, and she says happy birthday. I want to say happy birthday to Summer Lynn. She's going to be 9 years old on August the 9th. Summer Lynn lives in Indiana. Summer Lynn, you ready for school? Have y'all started school yet? I hope so. I hope all the schools are open really soon because, our society needs to get back to average life again. I hope that happens really soon. Happy birthday, Summer Lynn. I hope it's a great day for you on August the 9th. And then there are 2 sisters, Rachel and Emily. Rachel and Emily are 4 years apart. One of them's 4 years older than the other, but they're born on the same day, August the 19th. One lives in Florida and one lives in Lithuania in Europe, close to Russia. And girls, your mother says she misses you and she wishes that you could both be with her on your birthday. And she misses you every second of every day. I thought that was one of the sweetest emails I've gotten in weeks. There those girls are. Oh my gosh, they've grown up and moved away. Isn't that strange that our kids grow up and move away? Some people want to keep their kids at home. Man, my wife and I had a party when the last one moved out. We were so happy, and we stay in touch with them, and we keep their kids, and we love our grandkids, but we threw a party when they moved out. But they're all doing good, and I know Rachel and Emily are doing fine and living their dreams and doing what they want to do, and that's what we get to endure as parents. We get to either dread the day they leave, or we get to enjoy them, watching them go out, grow up, and do their thing and live independent, productive lives. And it looks like that's what Rachel and Emily are doing. So happy birthday, girls. Call your mom on your birthday. I know she's supposed to call you, but you call her because she misses you. All right, we got 3 awesome stories in this video. You guys hang tight. I think you're going to absolutely be blown away. They're 3 vastly different stories, but all 3 are so good. Let's quit yakking and get on with the video. All right, here we go. Here's a story from Sarah. Deep in the Blue Ridge, there's a place my husband had been warned about. You don't go in there before daylight, and don't let the sun set on your heels either, his big papa would say. These are big words from a giant of a man. Raised on Wattle Mountain, he was 6'4" and 280 pounds, and he wasn't afraid of anything. Afraid of anything except the devil's elbow, that is. There's an eerie cone of silence that filled that area that no one could explain. It is a silent place, no birds, insects, or other wildlife sounds. If you were there, you would hear your own breathing and heartbeat, nothing else. That's the way it was in there all the time. Big Papa had been raised near this area in a 6-log-high 2-story cabin. These woods had been untouched by man until logging had become a good source of income. That was Big Papa and Uncle Ben's job, logging in the very place that neither of them would venture into before daybreak or stay after dark. When Big Papa and Uncle Ben would walk down the street in nearby towns, people would step off the sidewalk and walk around them. Sheer size and reputation and rumors of why Big Papa had to leave town kept others at bay. Big Papa is gone now, but it took 9 men to carry his special-made casket to the grave. Ben and he were very big men, and many didn't know, but Big Papa was indeed a gentle giant, despite what everyone thought. Oh, and there is one living soul that Big Papa was afraid of, and that was his wife. This part of the story is funny to me because she was a very small woman, but was tougher than most men. She had been raised with boys and even carried her pocketbook in her back pocket like a man. She killed a catamount once and wore the claw around her neck. I wore it in my wedding as something old, like something new, something old, something borrowed, and something blue. That might be a mountain thing, but we still do it around here. Once when my husband was 2, Big Papa had scared him so bad after dark with a low animal-type growl that my husband had tore off his big toenail scrambling up the bank to get home. When Granny found out, she got a chair and a stick of stove wood and told Big Papa to stand still while she beat his head with that wood and dared him to move. I believed she aimed to kill him for scaring her youngest grandbaby, my husband. So here I find myself explaining about the man my husband looked up to, only to show you a bit of his past. His upbringing was very rough in comparison to mine, and he always tried to obey his Big Papa, and the story I will tell you should have been one of those times he heeded his warnings. The event takes place in 1985. Being much like his Big Papa, my husband loved being in the woods. He enjoyed hunting and the sound of the dogs baying a coon. So it goes that my husband had started out alone hunting in a place called the Devil's Hole. Well, alone with his 2 dogs, Little Russell, a Walker, and Old Looney, who was a black and tan. This trio would hunt 6 nights a week for 5 years. Looney was a dual Grand Night champion in coon hunting. Looney was killed by a panther some years later. This was a night my husband would never forget, and it took him years to even tell me the story. On foot, they went in the Devil's Hole and ended up in the very place that he was told not to go, the Devil's Elbow. That's where the dogs had bayed a creature my husband had never seen. It was the legendary Bigfoot. He first saw the creature standing in the middle of an old Forest Service road. Coon hunters know their dogs in every way, even the sound of their barking. They always know if the dogs are on a coon or something else. But this time they were booger barking. The dogs were nervous, but had the beast bayed in the road nonetheless. When he got to the dogs, he couldn't pull them off their stance. He searched the area with his light and couldn't find it at first, and then he saw it. Brownish black in color and at least 8 foot tall and 3.5 feet wide at the shoulders. What he was looking at was like nothing he had ever laid his eyes on. Other than the dogs barking, you couldn't hear anything, not even the river running, until it screamed. It was an ear-piercing sound, nothing like any sound he had ever heard. The dogs kept baying, and my husband raised his rifle and made eye contact with it. The animal grunted loudly and was gone. Nothing to see, nothing for the dogs to track. It just vanished. My husband said that he was never afraid during this encounter. I honestly think he was disappointed the hunt was over for that night. He never returned to the Devil's Elbow after that, though. He hunted the Devil's Hole, but never returned to the Elbow. Now he understands why Big Papa and Uncle Ben told him to stay out of there after dark. Well, that's my husband's story, Cam. I've known something happened to him back then, but I could only get bits and pieces. He doesn't talk about it. I've tried to pull the whole story from my husband for years, and recently he laid it all out for the kids and I. And now you have it. I hope you enjoyed it and can use it for your show. Oh, and as for me, I've only heard the scream and felt the fear myself once, but that's a story for another time. Thanks again for your time and for so much enjoyment from our family listening to your stories. Take care and God bless. Signed, Sarah. Sarah, I sent you an email after I got this story, and I was reading it today, and I feel the same way still today. You did a great job writing this. You took a really short event in your husband's life, and you were able to make it so exciting and write it so well that it was just a great story. Tell your husband hi, and tell the kids hi, and I really appreciate you sending this to me, Sarah. You're a good writer. Thanks. Here's an email from my good friend Todd. He's a prolific Bigfoot and cryptid story collector. He's really good at it. Here's what he writes. A friend once told me that he really wanted to see a Bigfoot. 2 years later, while headed into a neighboring town to do some shopping, we drove past a group of people stopped on the side of the highway. We weren't sure if they were all together or just random people pulled off the side of the road at the same time. It just seemed odd that so many people were gathered at the same time in the same spot. The temps were in the 70s with a clear blue sky, and if my memory serves me, it was 2 p.m. in the afternoon. We both commented on the spectacle of seeing so many people and wondered what was happening. Nevertheless, we continued driving for another several miles to a small grocery store. There, we both got what we needed, and then we headed back home. On the way home, as we approached the crowd, we pulled over. I told him that I was going to take some photos of the beaver dam that was located off to the side. Fortunately, there wasn't anyone in that area, so I was free to take my time photographing the fallen trees, flooding, and the beaver dam itself. My friend, however, walked right into the mess of people. Apparently, some were from a single family while others had just pulled over for a break and to stretch their legs. We were probably there about 10 minutes when I thought to cross the river below the beaver dam and see what was in the woods. Something or someone told me not to, so I stopped halfway across the river and I retreated back towards the vehicle. That's when I saw my friend standing next to a woman on the riverbank. He was pointing into the woods on the other side of the river. I didn't bother with the walk in their direction, and I decided instead to review my photos while waiting inside the Jeep. After another 5 to 10 minutes, he returned and we headed home. 3 years later, he was visiting family in Florida, and I was still in my small mountain town. He called and he said, "There's something I need to tell you." His words seemed strange, as he has never said that before. I wondered what was to follow. "Remember that day we pulled off to see what everyone was doing?" he asked. "Yeah," I replied. "Well, while you were taking pictures of that beaver dam, I walked along the riverbank while looking down into the river for potential fishing holes. You remember that?" "Yeah, I remember," I replied. "At one point, I looked up across the river into the woods, and I think I saw a Bigfoot." I was now shocked, and I said, "What?" It was standing behind a tree and moving or swaying its upper body from side to side while it watched me. When I realized that it was staring at me and we made eye contact, I pulled my head down and looked away, and I said to myself, "Oh, shit. Wait, that was 3 years ago, and you're just now telling me this?" I exclaimed. Yeah, I didn't know what to say at the time. And then I asked, "Well, what else happened?" And he continued. After looking away for a moment, I lifted my head and I looked back towards the creature. It had moved in just a brief second or two to my right, say 50 feet or more, and was shaking another tree. That tree looked to be 12 to 14 inches in diameter. The whole tree was swaying as it rocked it with just its arms. "What do you mean, its arms?" "It grabbed the tree and it shook it, without using its entire body to force the tree to move. There was also a woman nearby that I called over to see if she could see it too. And I replied, right, I remember seeing her beside you as you pointed into the woods. Yeah, that's when I asked her if she saw it. Well, what did she say? I asked. Well, she just stood there for a moment and then asked me if that was my friend. Evidently, she saw us pull up and exit the Jeep, so she had seen you. He continued. After I answered that you weren't 9 feet tall and all black, she paused for a second while trying to comprehend what we were seeing, and she finally asked, "Is that a Bigfoot?" And then he turned towards her and said that he didn't know. When they looked back across the river, the creature was gone. And as I stood there astonished, I said, I cannot believe you didn't tell me about this for 3 years, especially after saying you wanted to see one. Yeah, I know. I needed time, I guess, to think about what I had really seen and if it was really a Sasquatch, he replied. That's the end of his encounter, but I'd like to add something to his overall experience, Cam. Whenever he was in town visiting the 3 years since having this experience and before telling me about it, he would crash at my place. Before going to bed each night, I would download several Bigfoot encounter stories from different YouTube channels and set them to play on my computer in the living room. Some of them were over an hour long, and he'd listen to them while crashed out on the couch. I can't say how many hours in all he consumed of other people's Bigfoot encounter stories, but I think they all helped him cope with the trauma of what shocked his beliefs on that day. Even after he returned to Florida, he continued to listen to people's stories, and that gave him the courage and confidence to finally tell me what he had experienced that day. Though it was a non-threatening experience, it still shook him to his core and challenged his beliefs. In the days, weeks, and months that followed, he searched his memories of any other times that he may have experienced Bigfoot activity, namely while deer hunting on his family farm in Indiana. This was prompted by many of the Bigfoot show call-ins he listened to by fellow hunters. For example, he recalls a time that he heard what he always thought was a smack on the water by a beaver's tail, but he now wonders if it was a tree knock or a smack on a tree from a Sasquatch. His mind told him it was probably just a beaver, even though he knew they didn't have beaver there. And then there's that tree that fell close to him while he was perched silently in his tree stand listening for deer. He said it was so loud and close, and it sounded like a huge tree crashing to the ground. It really startled him because he didn't hear anyone else out there with him, and it was so sudden. When he was done hunting for the day, he climbed down the tree and went in search of the tree. To this day, he's never found it, and that's confused him. Hearing other people call into Bigfoot podcasts and YouTube shows to detail their strange run-ins with Bigfoot or Dogman has helped to make sense of many memories he's had over the years while hunting. And that's the end of Todd's email. And what he wrote in the last 2 or 3 paragraphs is true, because I get a lot of emails of people say, I never thought of this until I heard this other story. And now I'm wondering what in the world that has happened to me so many years ago that has bothered me ever since. It's the same thing. I'm not on some mission to bring all this stuff forward. I just enjoy these stories. People can tell stories about anything, and they're interesting. But when people tell stories about strange events, strange creatures, paranormal kind of things, weird things, man, the stories just get better and better and better. And that's why I love them so much. So, Todd, thanks for sending that. Keep those coming and I would like to invite everybody, if you've heard a family member, a buddy, somebody else tell a story, even if it was a long time ago, man, write that story down and let's get it out there for people to enjoy, because all of these stories they're important in that I think the stories are really entertaining and great to get out, but they're also important because I think it adds to, like Todd said at the end of his email, that it jars people's memories and it makes them start thinking. So anyway, I'm running on and on here, so I'll end up. Todd, thanks for the emails. Keep sending them, buddy. This is a great story. The author's name is Walter. Walter at one point lived in California, and this is where that story takes place. And here's what he writes. I was considering my strange story and seriously thought that I might not send it. It doesn't have the desired Bigfoot sightings that many of your listeners crave. However, the story is one that is tied to Bigfoot or along that vein. Since I've heard many stories of Bigfoot's vocalizations that are amazing and varied, I came to the conclusion that this might have been the source of my confrontation occurring in the East Bay Regional Park of Oakland, California in the mid-1990s. I'm sending this to make people aware that when hiking alone, there are strange, frightening things that reside in the wilderness areas. When alone in the wilderness, anything can happen. On a sweltering hot July day in Oakland, California, it was partly cloudy and I was home with my wonderful son and my bride Gina. I'm an avid hiker, and during this time I was struck by a strong desire to explore the gorgeous East Bay's Redwood Park. This beautiful park is off Skyline Boulevard and Redwood Road in Oakland, California. It is one of the most beautiful and well-run parks in the nation, in my opinion. So I had to get out of the house and stroll the trails passing the horse stables, which allow many to ride horseback throughout the park's myriad of trails. There are services not related to the park district which offer guided tours through the park's trails and golden landscapes. Oaks and eucalyptus fill the serpentine strata of geologic formations forming from past volcanic activity. There are vast open areas of amber grasses, stone outcroppings, along with beautiful vistas surrounding you on every side. It is worth visiting East Bay Regional Parks, exploring, or to bring the family for a wonderful picnic with the beauty of nature, solitude, communing with the wildlife. Even parrots are part of the wildlife. Plus, you might meet the wonderful folk who live adjacent to the park or live nearby. Children would love it, of course, but watch them closely. Venomous snakes, badgers, coyotes, and other unseen dangers can be deadly. Could it be there are spirits wanting to elicit fear so it will create confusion, causing people to make drastic mistakes in judgment while suspending the rational mind? This would naturally lead some inescapable consequences. I almost didn't make it back from my hike. When I couldn't resist the wanderlust within my soul any longer, I asked my wife if she wanted to join me on an adventure. I had the day off and the weather was wonderful. For her, it may have been rather hot for the jaunt of about 3 to 4 hours, even if we had a small picnic, so she declined. I sought her permission to strike out alone. She agreed to this as long as I was careful, and back by dusk or before the evening crept into darkness. I gathered my bottled water, food, and my favorite power bars to carry in my pack, and then I grabbed my manzanita staff along with a dark green wool cloak with a wide hood for protection from the sun. Believe it or not, the wool cloak blocked the sun and actually kept me cool, preventing heat stroke or exhaustion. I like preparing well for hikes since you never know what may happen. I did not plan on going off trail or into areas of arduous physical exertion, so I thought I would be fine without my first aid kit. I knew the trails very well. I had hiked them for years before this day of unexpected adventure, trial, and fear. I will never forget this day, since all that happened was beyond extraordinary. I started off with a quick pace on MacArthur Boulevard and I walked to the intersection of Redwood Road. I turned right, starting my 30-minute trek to Skyline Boulevard, where the beautiful Oakland Hills homes are nestled in their secluded hideaways. I began the walk to the ranger station on Skyline Boulevard, reaching the area where they have a water fountain with benches for resting after hikes. I reached the trailhead at 3:30 p.m. I then decided to head straight to a shade tree that I loved. The branches on this tree hung to the ground around the whole tree, and it gave a pleasant cooling shade, allowing me to avoid the grilling heat on those brilliantly sunny days. I hit the Graham Trail to the intersection of Dunn and was excited about the hike ahead, going along the shaded equestrian trail while relishing the thought of the sights that I would see. On previous hikes, I've seen wildlife frolicking under a full moon, unequaled in beauty compared to anything I have ever seen. Now, as I made my way to the connecting trail leading to my tree, which I considered a special place, I enjoyed taking the hike slowly while investigating the sounds or stopping to look at different plants, insects, or just to admire the views that stretch all the way to Mount Diablo. I was in my glorious heaven. I arrived at my tree and climbed into the thick branches while thinking about my life and troubles. I pulled out my snacks and an ice-cold Dr. Pepper. After a long time of relaxation, I was beginning to think that it was now time to head back to the house and eat dinner my wife was busy preparing. I gathered up my pack with my Manzanita walking stick, starting the trek back home. It was calm, little to no wind, and not a soul in sight. I could hear what I believed to be small squirrels scurrying in the brush that surrounded the trail as I was trekking back home. It had been a wonderfully peaceful day on the trails exploring, and I was getting close to the fork in the trail where I would turn to go to the ranger station on Skyline Boulevard. As I neared the point of my turn, the wind began gusting, creating dust clouds while cutting into the brush, trees, and plants along the trail. It temporarily blinded me with dust as the wind chilled with mists of an approaching rainburst. I decided to stop and thought of finding cover in case of a heavy rain. However, the rainburst didn't happen as I thought it would, so I continued on to the left, heading back towards Skyline Boulevard. I had gone along the trail to a point where a lone power line was strung across the trail. I had walked along the trail to a point where a lone power line was strung across the trail, drooping not very far above my head. As I was approaching the turn to move lower into a small valley, it happened. There was a loud, crackling laughter around me in every direction, almost like an echo chamber reverberating endlessly. It sounded evil and mirthful at the same time. I immediately thought someone was playing a joke, and I yelled out, "All right, who's doing this? It's time to stop it right now." I thought about this for a moment, and I looked around, and there was no one who could be doing this without sound equipment, yet there was no sign or indication of anyone. And as suddenly as it had begun, the laughter stopped. It was now total silence. After 10 seconds, the wind went into powerful swirling gusts as I was standing there, and I was dumbfounded. I heard something behind me and turned around, finding a wall of thick fog before me. I stared into that fog, and I heard a deep guttural sound, almost as if it was chuckling. I was upset, and I was going to walk into the fog and find out what was in there. Instantly, in my mind, the words came to me, "No, turn around and leave. It's time to leave." So I turned around, and my mind went completely blank, filled with confusion. Where am I? Where do I go? Which is the way out? I don't know. I had been at this hiking area and over every inch of the trails, including every side trail. Now, here I was totally lost with no mind as to how to proceed. I walked in a direction, but I was unsure where it led. I just went tree to tree as rain started to gently fall. It was now getting cold and having no idea where I was, or worse, where I was going. I was surprisingly lost in an area that I knew like the back of my hand. I went along hoping to find something familiar, but the fog, the wind, and all the swirling, silvery, shimmering mists made everything look strange and ominous. I thought I should know how to get home, but right now there's no way to know if I'm even going in the right direction. I was now terrified, fearing that I would not come out alive while thinking no one will know what happened, and with the possibility they may never find me. Have I passed through some portal? Will I be wandering like this forever? I determined to find the way out no matter how long it took. I was wandering in every direction over the next 8 hours, bouncing tree to tree and looking for the lichen on them to help with the direction which would lead me out of this forest of fear and darkness that this formerly joyous forest had become for me. But it was to no avail. Then the darkness came, and my hope of finding my way out gave in to despairing hopelessness. Thinking the worst, I began imagining that I was doomed. This is how I will die. I started to tremble while slowly looking around and wondering which way to go. I had no clue, and no way seemed sure, as it was now pitch black. I heard strange sounds and crackling branches. What was it? I imagined horrible creatures as I heard sounds coming near and then sounding far away, and then shifting branches and the sound of footfalls coming towards me. Terror had me panicking to the point of inability to move, act, or think. I decided to keep moving, but afraid of what I might run into, or even more frightening thought, will something unnatural and evil find me? Things were at their very worst, and then, out of the midst of the dark swirls of mercury mists, a hay bale with a target on it. Oh joy, I was now on the archer's range and would be close to the road. I had to get to the archer's stand and figure out which direction the road of my deliverance was located. I wandered around, guessing it was about an hour, and I finally reached the archery registration office. I then wound my way around, finding the trail to the road, then deciding to take a shortcut through the brush. I saw a light, and 3 workers were under the light smoking pot. With my hood over my head and tightly wrapped up, I emerged from the dark woods and brush with my tall walking stick. The men froze as I said hello, and I was so relieved to find humanity and safety. I was out of the woods and on my way home. I walked up to the men, and they were as statues looking behind me, and they seemed as if they were frozen in time, like a museum setting. The burning pot was touching the man's finger, and he did not move or flinch or even blink. Not one of them moved or stopped to even notice me. They were frozen and looking behind me with a look of wide-eyed terror. I was going to look behind me, but I decided that that was not the thing to do, and I kept walking. I moved quickly to the next light at the intersection about 50 feet down the road, and I turned right, wondering what was wrong with those men. What had they seen, and why did they not acknowledge or notice me, or even ask if I needed help? I was moving as quickly as I could. I heard the restless branches and brush being jostled close by as I went to the middle of the well-lit road, and then I started slapping my walking stick on the pavement. Why? Because I was terrified, and this gave me some sense of security. It took another 30 minutes to reach the ranger station and hopefully safety. At that point, the noises ceased, and silence was once again surrounding me like a blanket. I walked to Skyline and then made my way to Redwood Road and went swiftly to MacArthur Boulevard that brought me 2 blocks from home. I walked in the door, and my wife Gina greeted me and asked if I was okay, and I mumbled, "I'm fine." And I went to my room, tossing my clothes to take a needed shower. I was savoring these moments and glad to be home, secure, safe, and with my family. I was thankful to escape whatever was in those woods. I knew I would go hiking there again, though. Would whatever was there stalking me be waiting for me next time? I didn't know. But when I did go back, I was careful in thinking that I wouldn't hike at night again. Of course, I ended up hiking at night many times after. The first time was fearful, but I overcame it. After that time, these events never happened again. Since then, I believe something is up in the East Bay Regional Redwood Park. I couldn't tell anyone outside of close family and friends since it sounds like a crazy story of an unhinged person. Yet it really did happen, and I'm glad I survived it. At the time of this hike, I thought my life was over. However, my Father above kept me safe, even as I was terrified at wit's end with no hope. Thanks to him, I'm here today. Signed, Walter. Oh, God, I'm sitting here just shaking reading this story. What a suspenseful story, and it's a true story, and that's what makes it. I could just see everything going on. But Walter, there's nothing else I can add to this story. I just want to thank you for taking the time to write it down. It's been a while since I got this email, and I'm just coming up on this story. Man, what a fantastic story. And the last question is Bigfoot causing all this confusion in these forests? A lot of people get lost. They get turned around. How does that happen? I don't know. I mean, it would seem like you're heading down a trail, come follow this trail to this one, to this one, to this one, and it'll get me home. But to get so turned around in there and know those trails like the back of his hand, it's just so strange. What do you guys think? Did Bigfoot cause all this confusion, or was Walter just turned around, and did the fog really confuse him that much? Walter, thanks again for sending this. I just love this story. I really appreciate you. Thank you, man. And we come to the end of another video. Thank you all so much for listening to this and watching till the end. I really, really appreciate you. And we'll see you guys on the next video. Thank you.